So, 7th grade, here we go. Now then, you need these supplies for today's class. You're going to need your homework, and you have 2 items of homework. If you remember Tuesday, you were given this handout, and you just simply need to have that handout ready. On one side, you have the stages of mitosis. You were to fill that in. On the other side, you had them again, but you had to fill in some missing parts and pieces and answer the questions at the bottom. So just make sure you have that out and ready to be turned in. I'm going to adjust the lesson today. That's going to be your ticket out the door instead, simply because we're coming off the heels of the pep rally, okay? Other classes reviewed that first thing. We'll switch it to last. Okay. Now then, you can see here, we're going to also review asexual reproduction. Yesterday, you were to make a title on asexual reproduction in your notes. And you were to read 2 pages, and then write a brief summary over budding, regeneration, and spores. So just go ahead and make sure you have that out and ready, okay? We're going to review that in class. In fact, I may be calling on you to share your summary. Okay? Now then, after we learn about asexual reproduction, then we're going to get into another one down here. Notice we have meiosis. We've already learned about mitosis. Mitosis is happening all the time in your body. It's when skin cells reproduce skin cells, or heart cells reproduce heart cells, or nerve cells reproduce nerve cells. Remember, the parent cell is just like the daughter cells, right? Well, meiosis is very different. In meiosis, you can think of it this way. God made me with meiosis. It's when 2 different cells came together to make you uniquely who you are. So remember when we read out of Psalms, it says that we're fearfully and wonderfully made. It's when 1 cell from mom and 1 cell from dad join together to pass on the genetic code for you specifically. So we learned how meiosis happens. Now, notice the other word for meiosis is sexual reproduction. Oh dear. Yep, we're going to get into sexual reproduction today and learn what it is. Yes, I know it has the S word in there. It's okay. Let's make sure we're mature. We can handle this, right? We're going to learn about this strictly on a cellular level. So, you're going to learn what gametes are. You're going to learn what fertilization is, and you're going to learn how zygote came about, okay? All right, so, and then of course at the end I'll introduce your homework, and for you guys, you'll be also turning this in. If you're joining us virtually, you'll be turning this in online in Google Classroom. All right, so let's go ahead and get things rolling here. First things first for you is asexual reproduction. All right, so let's go ahead and dive right on into asexual reproduction. All right, everyone have their notes out and ready?
Yeah.
Sweet. You were supposed to define asexual reproduction based on your reading. So, who can share a definition for asexual reproduction? In other words, what is it? Yes?
It's reproduction by mitotic cell division.
Whoa! Reproduction by mitotic cell division. Does that sound like the word mitosis?
Yeah.
Because it is. Asexual reproduction is simply mitosis. You've already learned it. You already know about prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. You know PMAT, don't you? Well, PMAT, or mitosis, is simply asexual reproduction. So here's a definition. So if you don't have this in your notes, you might want to add it in. If you already have a definition, just double check it, make sure it's good. You might not even need to change your definition.
Wait, hold
Okay?
on. What is this the definition for?
All right, this is the definition of asexual reproduction. All right, so the definition is this. When a parent cell produces an identical daughter cell, right? We know that's what happens in mitosis, don't we? We start off with 1 parent cell. It reproduces and duplicates to 2 daughter cells. But those 2 daughter cells are exactly like the original 1 parent cell, aren't they? That's asexual reproduction. So asexual reproduction is mitosis. They're the same thing. Whoa. All right, here are a few other things. The offspring is exactly like the parent, right? So the two new daughter cells that are produced are exactly like the original parent cell. That's kind of in this definition though, isn't it? So you don't necessarily need to add this to your notes, but just make sure you have a good working definition of asexual reproduction. All right, so really, mitosis is asexual reproduction, right? All right, the next thing you were to do in your work is read about budding, read about regeneration, and read about spores. Now, in your work, you were to not only read about those, you were also to make a summary, summarizing what they are. So, let's do that. Oh, careful. You all right?
Yeah, it rolled off right.
Okay.
I'm gonna put this back.
So first of all, this one here. Do you know which one it is? We have three options. We have budding, regeneration, and spores. So here you have the parent cell with this bulge growing off of it. If you look carefully, there's another bulge down here about to grow off of it as well. So what is this an example of? Jack, do you know?
Budding.
Budding? Really? You're absolutely right. That is an example of budding. In fact, that's a picture of a yeast cell. Budding and reproducing. How many of you guys have ever made Amish friendship bread? Oh, only one? That's it? Okay, it's pretty cool. Basically, you put yeast in a bag, and then you feed the yeast sugar. Did you feed it sugar? You pour some sugar in the bag every 3 days or so? You don't remember. So you have this yeast in the bag, and you pour in sugar like every 3 or 4 days. And the sugar is food. And you give the yeast cells food, and they grow. So they start bulging. In fact, you start with that little bag partway full, and after 10 days, you have a lot of it in there. And then you mix flour and add other ingredients, and you put it in the oven and you bake it.
Sounds like sourdough bread.
So you're baking yeast. That's what your bread is. Baked unicellular organisms. Ooh. All right, so Jack, you got this correct. So you probably have a good summary of budding. Would you share that summary, please?
Yes, sir. Budding is a form of asexual reproduction where a unicellular organism goes through mitosis. Then one of the new nuclei forms a bulge on the side of the organism. That new nuclei grows until it can break off.
Okay. Awesome summary. Excellent. So, you can see my definition. You heard Jack's summary. So just make sure you have a good quality summary in there, okay? So budding is simply when that cell bulges and a new nucleus is going to form in that bulge, just like Jack told us. Awesome summary. Now, does this look like an example of mitosis? It is. It's mitosis. Now the cool thing is you can have long, long chains of this going on. So not just one parent cell becoming daughter cells, but like multiples, all just reacting quickly. Bacteria often do this. They bud. And a lot of times they bud quickly. So you can get a lot of bacteria reproducing quickly. Just like that yeast in the Amish friendship bag. You can have just a little bit, and then in 10 days, your bag's full. Kind of creepy, huh? And then you bake it into bread. All right, here's another thing. This is simply mitotic cell division. Just like you said, it's mitosis, isn't it? Each bulge is going to be a new organism. And then finally, some examples. Yeast is an awesome example. Bacteria are also awesome examples of cells that do budding.
So how many times can like a parent cell grow a bulge? Like,
Basically, multiple times. It's just going to be reoccurring over and over and over.
because I see 3 on this one.
Yep. And your textbook shows you an example with, I think there are 5 or 6 all connected together.
How many at a time is the max?
It depends on the type of organism we're talking about. So yeah, we can have long strings growing all at the same time. And yeast is pretty quick. All right, so that's budding. How many of you guys have budding in your notes? Awesome. Let's move on to this one. Regeneration. Now, there's two very interesting pictures up here. This right here is a type of worm. It's a flatworm. It's called a planarian. Can you say planarian?
Miriam.
Planarians are incredible little flatworms. You can take a knife and chop them in half, and each half will grow into its own planarian.
Oh, you didn't read that?
That's
I actually
fun.
went to page 255 in the text.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Isn't it?
Wait.
In fact, you can do this, they say up to about 32 times. You can take one planarian, chop it into 32 pieces, and all 32 will grow into an adult planarian.
Wow.
Isn't that incredible?
That's just what?
So regeneration. And this little guy down here, he's a little salamander. He lives around Mexico City. He's endangered and he's almost extinct, but scientists have brought him into labs and we're working with this little guy quite a bit. And it's pretty amazing. In fact, I'm going to show a video of him. They call him the master of regeneration. It's called an axolotl. Can you say axolotl?
Axolotl.
An
That's an
axolotl
axolotl.
is another example of an organism that can regenerate. So what is regeneration? I mean, you guys read about it. You should have written a summary about it, right? Who can share a quick summary over what in the world regeneration even is? Oh, Jack already called on you. How about someone else? Zoll, do you have a summary back there?
Okay, regeneration is when part of part of an organism gets cut off. Then both sides grow into a new both organisms.
Right, absolutely. So basically it's the regrowth of either an organism or a limb or body part. So here's another way you could kind of say it. Good summary there. It's a process of regrowing. It can be regrowing as body parts. For example, how many of you guys ever played with like a lizard and broke its tail off?
Oh yeah. We grabbed its tail and it ran away.
Yeah, and the tail breaks off and it still wiggles around.
We kicked the tail.
Now eventually, that lizard will regrow a new tail.
Oh, wait, will the tail grow another lizard?
Now, the tail will not grow a new lizard.
That'd
But
be
the
really
lizard
cool.
will regrow a new tail. So, and there are multiple organisms that do that. So let's see this video. It's really quite interesting.
I think some of my friends told me about this.
Yes, do you have a question,
How
Alice?
does a sea cucumber reproduce?
A sea, you know, we'll learn about that. We'll specifically learn about that, okay? Now there are several sea creatures that do regeneration, like a starfish, for example. If you break off one of its stars, or one of its, what would you call that?
Fingers?
Fingers.
It will regrow a new one,
How
okay?
fast?
So multiple sea creatures also do regeneration. Sea cucumbers? Learn about sea cucumbers in the future.
Do you have a sea cucumber?
Oh, you found one on your trip, didn't you?
I found like 5.
Awesome.
And I all kept them in this one bucket and started like cleaning.
Did you bring them back home or did you release them back in the wild?
My mom and me were this.
Yeah.
They're
They would have died if you brought them home.
They were like
unfortunately.
squishy, like
Spracky ball
like
things.
speckled blobs.
They're pretty neat. Did you get to see them rolling around on the
And
sand?
then they always, so when I picked it up, they always would squirt water out of
Oh.
basically their butt.
So that was their defense.
I guess.
Kind of like when you pick up a grasshopper, it barfs on you.
And done. Barf on me.
It's fantastic.
If you pick up a grasshopper, they barf on you.
I
It's
didn't
their
know
defense.
that.
So my sister made the weirdest name for a sea cucumber when she was just joking around. A pickle rocket.
That's hilarious. A pickle rocket. Oh, funny.
Mr. Whitaker.
All right, yes.
So, you know how PJ has an axolotl?
Yes.
So, I think her grandpa got it from New Mexico
Mm-hmm.
and brought it home and gave it to her. And then
That's pretty amazing. They're
uh,
very rare if it's
yeah.
a real, actual axolotl.
It is, and it's like this big, but they thought it was a boy, and they named it Casper.
Mm-hmm. The ghost.
And yeah, and then later they have like a mirror on the bottom, and they're like, that's a girl, not a guy. And so, but then her dad told her they were gonna get her a guy, and so they'd have like
To have more?
reproduction of axolotls.
They are endangered, so
Axolotl.
it's very, very difficult to even get one.
Yeah.
Do they ever
So-
want to get a boy?
Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna share a video over the
Her
axolotl
13th
with you.
birthday.
I think an actual lizard has
When's her 13th birthday?
regeneration.
And the axolotl is pretty amazing.
Or no, July.
Now, the cool thing is an axolotl can use mitosis to build new cells.
Oh, that's
So that's the axolotl
Hers
up
is
close.
pink.
Oh, that one doesn't
Pink?
look as.
Okay.
The turtle.
It doesn't look as good as that
Alright,
last
so
one.
listen
Looks like
carefully because this
condoms.
gets really interesting. Axolotls are pretty amazing creatures, and we use them for research because they're teaching us about cancer. They're very resilient to cancer. So we'll actually, in labs, we'll inject them with cancer cells to see how they react. But then we call them the masters of regeneration, and you will see why. It's kind of creepy.
Yeah, hers
I
are
heard
pink
of
and have
this.
red eyes.
A Mexican salamander that scientists and the internet alike love for their amazing ability to regenerate limbs. And probably for that derpy smile.
Oh my gosh, that's my spirit animal.
Hi, I'm Danielle Dufault, and you're watching Animal Logic. Axolotls are members of the Ambistomatidae family and are native to a very small region in Mexico. Axolotls were revered by Aztecs, and their capital city was built on islands in the lakes inhabited by the creatures. But when the Spanish settled in 1521, they drained the lakes and built their city in its place. A first step in driving axolotls towards extinction. As Mexico City continues to grow and pollute, the axolotl population is pushed further and further towards the brink. Today, they can only be found in the wild in Mexico's Xochimilco Lake Complex near Mexico City. Axolotls are unique among salamanders because they are neotenic, which means that they reach adulthood without going through metamorphosis, so they retain all of their juvenile features. Like us millennials, while most salamanders will grow up, lose their gills and their dorsal fin as they get bigger and emerge onto land, axolotls will keep their feathery external gills and remain underwater permanently. It is extremely rare, but sometimes axolotls will reach maturity and go through metamorphosis, but even then, they tend to keep to the water. This has been accomplished in the lab by injecting them with a shot of iodine, after which they more closely resemble their relatives, the tiger salamander. Axolotls can get pretty big, measuring around a foot or 30 centimeters long, fully grown, and they have long lives, around 15 years in the wild. But probably the most interesting thing about them is their intense ability to regenerate. Many amphibians do have the ability to regenerate, but axolotls blow the competition out of the water. Not only can they perfectly and seemingly endlessly regenerate limbs, but they can also regenerate their spinal cord, jaw, tail, and skin, all without scarring. No matter how many times you cut off their limbs, they'll grow back perfectly. Every single time. And you wouldn't even be able to tell that you had cut off their limbs in the first place. You could also even cut out a chunk of their spine, come back in a month and a half, and they'll be no worse for wear. They are also 1,000 times more resistant to cancer than any other animal. It works like this. After the amputation, the cells at the site of the amputation lose their identity. So instead of being skin cells or blood cells, they become similar to stem cells, called pluripotent cells. And they're able to make any cell or tissue that the body would need to repair itself. In this case, they use the pluripotent cells to generate all the cells and tissues needed to create new, perfect limbs. This phenomenon is a favorite among the scientific community for its potential to help burn victims, amputees, and even cancer victims. Scientists have experimented with modifying the genetic...
Alright, so,
Ah!
creepy.
You gonna pause it right there?
Why do you think they want to research for, like, burn victims?
Wait, for what?
Why would we want to use research from this to help a burn victim? What?
A
How does
Burn?
that burn victim? Someone that got burned in a fire, burned up, or skin burned off. Drew?
Because your skin could be muscle and like your multiple different layers of skin could be burnt off that are all
Okay.
entirely different. But they can regenerate bones and skin like.
So if we can somehow use this regeneration gene to help mankind, maybe that would be helpful. You had someone that had a really bad burn and needed skin quick. That'd be great, right? Now notice, this gets a little creepy. It looks odd, doesn't it? We've also injected them with bioluminescence.
Why?
That
Make
means
'em glow in the
cells
dark.
that glow. Some organisms glow. So what we've done is taken the genetics from another organism that
I want to glow
glows
in the dark.
and injected it into the oxalotl.
I mean, I think we all.
Here's the really interesting thing.
We actually all.
At least my eyes.
We've taken cancer cells. We've taken cancer cells and put this glowing gene in them and then injected that into an oxalotl. Then we can watch the cancer cells and see what makes them grow quickly or what slows them down.
Why would you kill a perfectly good?
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, why would you kill a
Yeah.
perfectly good axolotl?
Let's
Or the
continue on
axolotl
with the
itself.
glowing axolotl, excuse me, and see
Because
why.
Killing one is worth figuring out how to cure cancer.
Genetic makeup of axolotls to include the green fluorescent protein, which is the protein that makes many jellyfish bioluminescent. While not just making axolotls look cooler, the glowing protein allows scientists to see things inside the axolotls that they couldn't before. For example, they'll tag cancerous cells with the protein, and then they can actually see how it spreads throughout their bodies. Even more interesting is that axolotls have plug-and-play body parts. You can amputate one axolotl's leg and place it in another axolotl, and it'll attach itself. It's especially interesting because you don't even need the whole
Make it
limb,
like a centipede,
just a few
put it-
cells. If you take cells from a neon axolotl and place them on an amputated body of an albino axolotl, the albino axolotl will actually grow a neon limb. Since their skin is quite translucent, you can actually watch the neon green bone grow out of an otherwise white axolotl. This has led to some fairly morally compromising work. In a study published in Science magazine in 1968, scientists were able to successfully transplant an axolotl head into the back of another axolotl. One subject lived for 65 weeks after the operation, with its second head growing right along with the first head. What animal should I check out next? Please let me know in the comments. If you want to
Alright, did you guys enjoy that?
Yeah. I
You
think
can see
her.
why we call it the master of regeneration, right?
I think
Look at
PJ's.
those axolotls.
So, to think, wow, you
Look
can
at
take the
those
head off
axolotls.
of one and put it on another and the head
I think
continue
hers.
growing.
Hers might be albino, but they have pink little feathers on the side. Like the hot
Like the
pink
gills.
feathers.
Mr.
Yeah.
Whitaker, I saw a thumbnail down there. It said that a axolotl can regenerate any body part, like its brain and its heart.
Yeah, it can regenerate a lot of different parts.
It's disgusting.
I mean,
PJ tried
If
to
you
get
think
me.
about it, like the backbone, just the backbone alone. If you took out our backbone, it'd kill us. It
Oh.
paralyzes.
Yeah.
But you can take out a section of theirs and it regrows.
Yeah.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It's like
And then
Can you
the
attach-
back. Wait.
Can you
Alright.
attach the other head to the other side of the axolotl? So like a two-sided axolotl?
You're watching
Have you
yourself,
never
kiddo.
seen double-headed
So,
squirrels or snakes?
A lot of interesting things you can do with an axolotl. And pretty cool. It's an amazing reflection of our designer and creator, right? God's pretty
Right.
creative.
I think they eat like bloodworms or something. Something like I don't know
Maybe
what
not
it's
that
called. So
Oh,
and then like they put them in the
does it
freezer.
live in a
PJ,
tank of water or is it on ground or like?
How much
her
does
tank
PJ
for it.
have?
It's a giant tank like this tall.
Does it live in water?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
She's
Wow.
an
It's in water, and she tried to make me feed. Every day she has to get a ton of worms out with like tweezers and drop them in, and it's so because it'll fall to the bottom, and he'll just like creep up on them, or she, and then like
I was like, yeah.
So let's continue on here. Now then next we're going to get into spores. So another type of asexual reproduction. Now you should have some kind of summary in your notes about spores, right? This is the backside or underside of a fern, and you can see those spores there. They look like seeds, and in fact they're a lot like seeds, but they're not seeds. If you call them seeds, they are sporally offended.
seeds.
I'm sorry, sorely offended. Sorry, not sporally. Anyway. Alright. So they're like seeds, but they're not seeds, okay? There's a big difference. Who would like to share their summary, quick summary over spores and what they are? Ferns have them. Fungi have them.
I'm a fun guy.
Max, you want to share yours?
Uh,
Alright, Max. Go ahead and speak up real loud so we can hear you, okay?
I actually couldn't find much on this, sadly. And I was really yesterday, so I don't have to
Do you have a summary on it?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little, sure, go ahead and show what you have.
It says spore is a cell surrounded by a protective covering.
Mhm.
It's produced by mitotic cell division.
Absolutely, that's great, that's great. So basically, it's one cell, but it has an extra layer of protection on it. So it has a real hard little outer covering, but that one tiny cell can grow into a new fern plant, or a new mushroom, or a new fungus. So spores, one little cell, protective coating, and it's basically mitosis. One cell growing into another, and eventually into a new organism. So you do need to know that spores have protective coverings. This is another example of mitosis, isn't it? Notice these are all forms of mitosis. In fact, asexual reproduction is mitosis, isn't it? Same thing. Each spore can grow into a brand new organism. And ferns and mosses and fungus or fungi are perfect examples. What we're going to do is just barely introduce the next topic, okay? And then we're going to come back on Monday and dive more into it. In fact, your homework will be on this topic. So we've learned about asexual reproduction. We're going to switch gears now. In asexual reproduction, you have one cell becomes two, and they're identical. They're exactly alike. And in fact, it's happening in you. A skin cell becomes a skin cell. Heart cell becomes a heart cell. Nerve cell becomes a nerve cell. But before that ever happened, before those mitosis ever happened in your body, meiosis had to occur. And meiosis is also called sexual reproduction. So, yes, we're going to just barely get introduced to this
No
topic.
thanks. Can we just like not?
So let's go ahead and prepare our notes, please. Go ahead and write today's title in your table of contents. The title is Sexual Reproduction.
Well, that's me how my day went. I'm going to be like science, 2 words.
No.
Sexual reproduction.
And we're only going to look at this from a cellular level, okay?
Yay.
No, it's a puppy! On a cellular level when you were born. Now the cool thing is the Bible talks about this. Remember in Psalms? It tells us we were fearfully and wonderfully made. When that genetic information was knit together. So, sexual reproduction. We can also call it meiosis. Here's what it is. So in your notes, make sure you have your brand new title, today's date, which is November, good grief, November 5th, the wrong month. And we're going to just barely get into sexual reproduction, right? I'll tell you what, we'll have to do it on Monday.
Yeah. We got a whole weekend to not prepare.
All right, now, on your way out, please turn this in, and virtual students, you're going to turn this in online. So turn this in, but also you need to pick up Friday's homework. You have 2 pages of reading and 1 page of homework to complete. So pick that up on your way out, please.